Steelers made a new move yesterday, signing defensive tackle Kyler Baugh.
Who?
If you want to find out more on Kyler Baugh, I suggest you do your own research, because today we have more pressing issues. Terry McLaurin officially requested a trade. Now, yesterday I said I don't think the Commanders are trading Terry, but at that point, Terry didn't put in an official trade request. But it's not like trade requests automatically mean they're going to be traded either, because Myles Garrett did that, Brandon Ayuk did that, T. Higgins put in a trade request a couple years ago, Deebo Samuel, he ended up signing an extension with the 49ers after his trade request. And Trey Hendrickson, didn't he request a trade last offseason? He's still with the Bengals and, in fact, just ended his holdout and showed up to training camp just a couple days ago. So this trade request for Terry McLaurin doesn't mean everything, that he's automatically going to be traded. And it's just going to come down to what team offers the best deal. But it's also like not nothing. Most likely thing is that McLaurin is just using this trade request for negotiation tactics, and he'll still ultimately be a Commander. But at the very least, this does mean he's ready to play elsewhere, because we didn't know how willing he was to potentially play on another team. He's been with Washington his whole career. Obviously, there's been tension between the contract talks. He's holding out. But, yeah, we didn't know if ultimately he would cave, because he loves it in Washington and wants to see the whole rebuild through, especially now that they got Jaden Daniels and he had a career year last year. Obviously, good with playing elsewhere with this trade request. Part of it is negotiation tactic, but whenever you put an official trade request, like, that does mean business. That does have to mean that you are willing to live with the consequences of being traded, right? You can't just say, I request to be traded, but then be pissed off when you get traded, right? And for the Steelers, listen, our offense has been built up to a point where I believe we're ready to go with what we got. But when you have a chance to add Terry McLaurin, that's just tough to overlook. And I'm sure Omar Khan is doing his due diligence. He's already on the case. Now the questions are, how satisfied with our offense are we really? And compare that to how badly do we want another high-end weapon? How satisfied are we with our offense versus how badly do we want another high-end weapon? And for what price would we be willing to get that extra high-end weapon? Because sure, if all it took was a 6th-round pick to get Terry McLaurin, it'd be a no-brainer. We're not worrying about chemistry or him messing up the vibes or anything like that. But we know it's going to cost a good draft pick, significant draft pick, and maybe a player. And then we also got to give Terry his money, because he's seeking that new contract. So it complicates things a little bit in terms of the price to get McLaurin, and obviously you got to give him the contract. But at the same time, if this Terry McLaurin deal is legit an option, it's actually on the table, Terry McLaurin could be traded for. I feel like if you're the Steelers, you just got to do it. You got to do it. No matter how good you feel about the offense right now, no matter how good you feel about Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson and Robert Woods, I think this is just one of those moves you got to do. Unless the Commanders are asking for crazy stuff like multiple first-round picks. But if a fair deal can be had where it's, say, a second-round pick and a player, second-round pick and Roman Wilson for McLaurin, and then we give McLaurin his money, I just think you got to do it. Like, you can afford it. You have this window with Rodgers on a cheap deal as your quarterback, and then moving forward after Rodgers, the post-Rodgers era, you're going to have a quarterback on a cheap deal for the next 2-3 years, guaranteed. Assuming you don't go through free agency and get a quarterback via trade, it's either you got Will Howard, rookie quarterback, or Mason. You're going to have a guy on the cheap deal. So you could afford having Terry McLaurin, having DK Metcalf, and having basically the roster that we have for not only this year, but for the foreseeable future. Rodgers, and then after Rodgers, it's Will Howard, rookie QB, Mason, most likely. Unless, the Steelers throw us a curveball when we trade for someone or sign someone in free agency. I already mentioned Roman Wilson in a second-round pick. That's a trade proposal some people are throwing out there. Highsmith in a draft pick. Highsmith in like a second or a third. I don't really want to do the Highsmith one because I think we need him on defense. I feel like we need that three-headed monster at the edge rush spot. Obviously, Herbig could probably step in, but you need that depth at the edge rush position. You really do. I don't want to give up Highsmith right now. If we're talking earlier in the offseason, before free agency and the draft, that's a different story. But right now, I like the defense where it's at. Let's not mess with it. Roman Wilson in a pick makes sense, though. Receiver for receiver, and you give up a second-round pick. It took a second-round pick. You know what? Honestly, we gave up a second-round pick for DK Metcalf and gave him his contract. And we talked about the DK Metcalf and McLaurin comparisons, how they're on pretty much the same exact page. What if it was Roman Wilson in the third? Could we do that? I mean, obviously, that would be better than Roman Wilson in a second. But I could see the Commanders playing hardball. I could see the Commanders not wanting to trade McLaurin at all. But if McLaurin's this pissed off and is like, bro, if you don't give me the number that I want, I'm not playing here. Now, are the Steelers fine with paying McLaurin the number that he wants if it is like $33 million? We can afford it. We can afford it. I think the thing that matters most is the guaranteed money. So you could have the $33 million be the headline, but if only a portion of it's guaranteed, then yeah, that's that. It would suck giving up Roman Wilson because I am excited to see what he could do, but it's just like, come on, bro. What are we talking about here? We haven't even seen Roman Wilson play yet. McLaurin is a bona fide top 10 receiver. Year in and year out, 1,000 yards with shitty quarterbacks. And then he gets Jaden Daniels in 2024, puts up double-digit touchdowns, 13 touchdowns, has a career year. I think we'd be ecstatic. I just ran off McLaurin's numbers, his perennial numbers. He's a top 10 receiver. I think we'd be ecstatic if Roman Wilson just got like 600 yards this year. So there's levels to this. 600 yards from McLaurin would be an awful year. And it's not like Terry is falling off a cliff anytime soon here either. I mean, he's still 29. You got at least, I would say, 3 more prime years left. And that would be alongside DK Metcalf with the contract we just gave DK Metcalf. You're helping out Aaron Rodgers and you're helping out whatever quarterback takes the mantle for 2026 and beyond. If you can do it, if you can get a fair deal, McLaurin's legitimately on the trade block, I think you got to do it. You got to. I really like where we're at as a team, and I think there's legit reason to stay put and see what we got with Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin, and Robert Woods and company, but you can make that case. Keep the draft pick, Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin, potential breakout seasons. But I've been talking all offseason about taking swings and going for broke. And trading for McLaurin would be the latest example of that. We've done it this whole offseason, so why not one more? We got one more left in the tank. I know we really value these 2026 picks, but we got enough. We give up a second. If it really took that second in Roman Wilson. Now, I just went over the DK Metcalf trade, and all it took was a second. So what if it is just a second for McLaurin and we could keep Roman Wilson? Or what if it's Roman Wilson in the third? We know the con artist has definitely checked in on this. Now, will a move ultimately get done? He gave off in his interview with McAfee that I'm not really looking to add any more energy.
I really like the group that we have here.
But don't forget, Omar said this in the past.
We have I have full faith in Kenny.
And also said this.
I think ideally, like to sign one of the guys that we had last year.
And how did those two situations play out? Bottom line, I don't think McLaurin gets traded. I think this was a negotiation play. Commanders can't afford to not have him. Who's their next receiver after McLaurin? Even if they got another receiver back, he's not going to be as good as McLaurin. And you got Deebo Samuel as your two. I think their offense will turn into a mess pretty quickly if they don't have McLaurin. McLaurin has a ton of leverage here. I think he has more leverage than a lot of other receivers that have been disgruntled with their teams. Ton of leverage. And I think, too, if he is really available, because Commanders have said they don't want to trade him. They're not trading him. Almost like what happened with Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett put his trade request in. Brown said, no, we're still not trading you. So if a trade actually was going to happen, I think just the price would be too high. I'm sure there is something that the Commanders would agree to, even if they said they're not trading McLaurin. But I think it would be too high for the Steelers and what we'd be willing to give up, especially if it involves high picks for next year's draft, because we really value our 2026 picks, given the quarterback class and the drafts in Pittsburgh. Whether that's right or wrong, I do think Kahn, Rooney, Tomlin feel strongly about these 2026 picks. I think if this is one of those moves where if it's presented and it's reasonable enough and you're the Steelers, you just got to do it. On the principle of being all in for 2025, and this would be in perfect alignment of that message. So let me know your thoughts. I like where we're at. I don't think we need McLaurin, but we didn't need Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith either. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Have a great, safe weekend out here. Stay tuned for more because Steelers are doing Friday Night Lights out in Latrobe tonight. Have to keep you updated on that at some point over the weekend. But that's it for today. Stay chillin'. Peace.